Jesus.
On such and such airway. But that Drudge Report example that I gave you is relevant to what's happening now. Because, as you all know, Matt Drudge would go on to become the first major turncoat against Trump and the MAGA. Very, very similar to what we're seeing here with Tucker and Alex and Megyn and Cam. So back in 2018, Drudge suddenly, out of nowhere, did a complete 180. All his headlines were suddenly anti-Trump, and he was linking to MSNBC articles and CNN articles and all the legacy media outlets. It was literally as if Rachel Maddow had secretly taken over. And the consequences for that turn were devastating. Again, the key here is that when Matt Drudge simply started repeating legacy media talking points, what happened to him? Well, he collapsed. Of course he would. He ended up betraying the very basis for his platform. And so at his peak in May of 2017, when Drudge was still a Trump champion, the site was pulling in over 1 billion page views per month. That is huge. 1 billion page views per month. After going anti-Trump, the collapse in web traffic was almost immediate. The site has since plunged. According to ComScore, visitor traffic is down a devastating 81% from that peak in 2017. 81% decline. Isn't it interesting? The moment you start parroting CNN, you start seeing the same kind of declines that CNN has seen in that same time period. The Drudge Report, for all practical purposes, today is a non-entity. It's not cited. I've not seen it quoted by any reports, news, anything that I've read of late over the last several years. It's not cited either by right or left commentators. It's just a shell of what it once was. And I bring that up because the Drudge case is essentially the Megyn Kelly and Tucker Carlson and others' problem in slow motion. Abandon your core audience for an audience that will never love you, and you end up with neither. And that's the tragedy that I think is unfolding right before our very eyes, with particularly these four influencers that Trump has singled out. The tragedy is that their inevitable demise from this turnaway from Trump makes alternative media, what again Elon would call the new media, all the poorer. It robs us of insightful and analytical and illuminative commentary that makes us all the richer. So again, I want to underscore, I get no joy out of this, but I do think there is a very profound rationale for why they're doing this, for why they're basically embracing Ilhan Omar talking points. And that's exactly what I'm going to show you next. But first, if you are just joining us, our super chats are up, so feel free to send in your comments and questions. I'll be happy to answer them right here on this live stream. Also, gang, let's face it, you know, you had a number in your head, right? The number you thought would be enough to retire, and then the price of life went up and up and up. And now the question isn't whether you save, it's whether what you save can still buy the retirement you plan for. I mean, think about what's happening right now with the war flaring up and oil spikes, and everything gets higher, gas, groceries, insurance, bills. We've seen this before. We're watching a structural shift in the global economy where inflation isn't temporary, it's embedded. And historically, when that happens, purchasing power doesn't recover, it erodes. Your dollar buys less, savings carry less. And people who are counting down to retirement start wondering if they've got to push it back, all because the cost of living moved the finish line. That was my wake-up call. I knew there had to be something else I could do to protect what I built. So I researched, and that's when I found Augusta Precious Metals. And gang, They taught me things I didn't even know were possible. I had no idea you could move your IRA or your 401k into physical gold, tax-free, penalty-free, a real asset that's held its value through war, through oil spikes, market chaos, and that changed everything for me. I've spoken with Augusta's education team. These guys know their stuff, and they explain it so clearly. So here's what I recommend you do right now. Go to turleybuysgold.com or text Turley to 35052. That's 35052 to get Augusta's free gold IRA guide. It's turleybuysgold.com or text Turley to 35052 because the retirement you dreamed of is still possible, but only if you protect it. All right, gang. So
a new way to
there have
lose
been
a
a
run.
number of offered explanations for
That's a
why
new
we're
way to
seeing
lose
this
a run.
propensity to parrot woke talking points among so many of these podcasters on the right. Konstantin Kisin, himself a prominent figure in the new media, he actually diagnosed what he saw as behind what he called the wokeification of the right. James Lindsay he has some similar analysis to this. And what they both recognized was that the key characteristic for wokeness is this thing called decontextualized characterization. Decontextualized characterization. So if you think about what woke originally was, it's a worldview that says our society is irredeemably broken. Everything about it is terrible. And the only explanation for any of our problems is the malice of a shadowy enemy class. And they're always the problem, no matter what. So that's how the stage is set. Our society is irredeemably broken. It's oppressive, it's evil, whatever. And so the woke cast blame
That's what they kept
on
saying.
a character constant. That's what you gotta get. The woke cast blame for this evil on a character. It's like a comic book. An evil villain who's a constant. A character that's always behind the scenes inflicting evil. So in biblical terms, right, it would be Satan. It would be demons, things like that. For the woke left, that enemy is white supremacy. And they peddle the evil of racism. So racism is the evil that they blame for all of our ills, and white supremacists are responsible for that racism. Okay? So that's that decontextualized characterization. Again, the key here, there is no context. There's no, okay, well, yeah, certainly racism certainly has been operative in the past, no question, but what about now? Right? What's going on right now? And how do we know what's going right now? And how do we differentiate between what happened in the past and what happened later? What were the conditions that exemplified racist attitudes in the past? And how are they different today? Is there any difference? If there's no difference, why? Right? Differing contexts are never foregrounded for the woke. That's the notion of decontextualization. It's always a matter of a singular evil with a singular bad actor perpetrating that evil. So for the woke left, the decontextualized evil is racism, and the decontextualized actor, the nefarious actor, are white supremacists. What Kisin is that we can see virtually the same decontextualized characterizations here among these four horsemen, just with different evils and actors. And he focused primarily on Tucker. For the woke right, as he calls them, Kisin says the evil is Zionism, or it's globalism. And the enemy is Israel, or the globalists, or the WEF, or the JOOS, you know, right, or the neocons, whatever it is. Now, again, don't get me wrong. I have absolutely no problem with any of those diagnoses, provided that the context affords that diagnosis. I have no problem calling out globalists. I have no problem calling out neocons. I have no problem calling out Zionists. If, and this is key, if the analysis of the situation, if the context calls for it. But how on earth could the context call for it when you begin with moral denunciation? When you begin with the end already in place? Because remember, moral denunciations come at the end of an extended argument. Once you make your extended argument, go ahead and morally denounce. You have every right. You have a right to it because at least we now know we have the path to that denunciation laid bare for us to consider. But when you begin without even actually knowing what Trump is actually doing, when you begin by declaring that what he's doing is disgusting and evil, where's the context? Where's the assessment? Where's the analysis? It's gone. And instead you get the very same decontextualized characterizations that the left peddles, but now with the evils and the actors specific to the right. That's Kissin's analysis, which I think is very good. I want to take that analysis a step deeper because I don't think Kissin explains why these podcasters and influencers are falling into that decontextualized characterization trap in the first place. Why are they beginning with moral denunciation? Why are they tapping into the same structure of evils and nefarious actors that you see among the woke left? And for me, this is where the analysis of the tech scholar Eric Davis comes in. What I love about Davis is he's a postmodern scholar in the sense that he does not make a dichotomy between technology and tradition or science and religion. In fact, he would argue that that dichotomy does not actually exist, which I would agree with. He has an interpretive frame that he calls technosis. It's a fascinating historical study on how technology, particularly online digital networks, are actually very powerful carriers of deeply religious impulses. So Davis has noted that technology has always historically involved religious and esoteric sentiment. Writing is itself technology, right? Actual written out thoughts are a form of technology. And thus the religions of the book, right, as they're called, the Bible, the Torah, the Quran, these are examples of how technology has always been a primary transmitter of religious impulse and sentiment. And what Davis argues, in my opinion, quite convincingly, is that modern technology, particularly digital technology, is saturated in what he calls technosis. It's the Silicon Valley notion that the internet and digital technologies can actually create a common network consciousness that would ultimately liberate humanity from the world. That's sort of the key. That's the key issue that he'll focus on. And he notes that, and he diagnoses that conviction, that Silicon Valley conviction, is structurally Gnostic. So that's what he calls the sentiment, this worldview fostered on digital online technologies, technosis. It's inherently Gnostic. Now, if you don't know, ancient Gnosticism, which flourished in the 2nd and 3rd centuries AD, in many ways it was a Christian heresy. It held that the visible material world wasn't created by the true God. It was created by a lesser, corrupt, ignorant deity called the Demiurge. And the Demiurge rules the world through darkness and deception, and he keeps souls trapped in ignorance. The true divine reality is hidden. It's inaccessible to ordinary people. And it can only be accessed through a special, secret knowledge called gnosis. Right? Gnosis is the Greek word knowledge. So if you don't know, you're called an agnostic. So the A there is an alpha privative, and it negates what follows. Agnosis, not knowledge. Atheist, an atheist is no God, right? So gnosis means knowledge. It's a special illumination, as it were, revealed only to the spiritually elect, and usually by a seer, someone who has that special enlightenment, that secret knowledge, and is offering it to you as well. So the Gnostic lives with a permanent sense of alienation. The world around him is fundamentally evil. All you see is betrayal. Nothing is as it appears to be because it's controlled by dark powers. The masses are hopelessly blind, and only the Gnostic and his or her inner circle possesses the hidden knowledge that explains why everything is broken. And what Eric Davis argues in this landmark study called Technosis is that today, in our modern age, in an almost very much an
Jump over that
future
thing.
outworking, that secret knowledge comes by way of the computer
Just
browser.
keep dying in this area, man.
It comes by way of the digital screen. It comes by way of the digital network that transcends our material surroundings and offers us a way of escaping this fallen world through a special cyber form of knowledge. Now, I remember a good friend of mine some months back. He used that frame. He did not know of Eric Davis's scholarship, but he used that exact frame of modern-day Gnosticism to diagnose cancer. So we were talking about Candace. He was asking my opinion on it. I gave him some muttered opinion. And this is when he shared it with me. He says, I actually think, and he's a brilliant theologian, I actually think Candace Owens is a modern-day Gnostic. She claims to have secret knowledge that she gets. Now, he didn't talk about this, but interestingly, from the internet, from digital technologies. And she offers it to her audience as a way of being rescued from a fallen, evil, dark world that in woke terms will always have these deep contextual characters. And I remember when he said that, I was like, dude, that's it. That's it. And that's when I made the connection between what he said and Eric Davis. That's when I had read Eric Davis previously. I was listening to what's going on with these influencers, and was talking with my friend, and it clicked. Right? Hopefully that's what you get on this channel. All these clicks. Wow, I never saw how those things related to each other. So I finally got to see how Technosis related to these online influencers who are actually functioning as Gnostic seers for their audience. And so I was very intrigued when I recently came across this piece from the Manhattan Institute, which was published in the Wall Street Journal, titled exactly, I kid you not, again, this is all independent, what I love about research. Candace Owens is a latter-day Gnostic. It's from September of last year. And the argument of that piece is that Owens conspiracy theorizing about Charlie Kirk's death, claiming hidden Jewish influence behind it, declaring that anyone who debunked her claims was part of the cover-up. That's very, very Gnostic. It follows the exact structure of this ancient Gnostic heresy. And the telltale sign is an unfalsifiable system where all refutation becomes confirmation of the hidden truth only she can see. And only she can see it because she's got this special esoteric knowledge untainted from this fallen evil world. And what I'm noticing here is that this is, I won't say the exact, but it is a very comparable pattern that we see among all the four horsemen that Trump called out. What I found so fascinating in their assessment of this war, from what and admittedly, from the minimum, I'm not dove in deeply into what they're talking about. Obviously, it's Trump's. But from what I have seen, I see a total lack of epistemological humility. And I'll, you guys can call me out on this anytime you want. I've called you guys out on this. What we all have to understand is that none of us, let that hit you, none of us has the intel that Trump and his inner circle has. No one. It's the highest classified information. No podcaster, especially Joe Kent, no one has that intel.